Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by Andy Horsfall-Turner, who's a British pro triathlete. He's been on the TV cameras quite a few times at the start of the races, normally leading the swim out and up in the mix on the bike. Andy's had, I think you've had a really good career so far, haven't you, Andy? You come in from swimming and often at the front of races, and you managed to win some races. I remember hearing about your name first of all when you won Outlaw Triathlon. I think that was
Yeah,
probably before
yeah.
COVID. Was it 2018, 2019 time, something like that?
2021, yeah, just at the back of COVID, yeah.
Oh, was it that late, 2021? So it isn't actually that long that you've really been in the pro ranks. Because did you turn pro just after that?
So yeah, turned pro just after 21, but I didn't even do my first Ironman till 2019. So yeah, literally, I've been in the sport. Well, it feels like not very long, but it is like almost 5 years now. But it's still gone pretty quick.
That's Iron Man, mate. It'll take a few years off your life. That. what what was the first Iron Man that you did then? Was it Wales?
Yeah, so I raced a bit like everyone does. I kind of just I'm from South Wales, so everyone each year does Tenby, and when I got into triathlon like middle of 2018, I wasn't really taking it like that seriously. I was like just like randomly, sporadically going for like a run or biking, and then everyone locally would do Ironman Wales at the end of September. So I in 2018 saw loads of people do it, and then 2019 I thought, screw it, I'll give it a go. Um, and I just was like looking back at it now, I'm like, I don't know how I managed to do as well as I did off the training I did because I had never ridden, or I'd ridden 180k once. I'd never like gone for a run longer than like 18k. Maybe I'd managed a half marathon if I like pushing it, but like then I went like 10:0. I think I was 10:04 around Wales. Um,
Solid on that course, isn't it? Like for your
yeah,
first
it's
one,
not
obviously
bad. It's not bad at all.
you got addicted to it then because you came back for more, and you've been in the sport for 5 years. So it obviously
Yeah.
didn't put you.
Oh man, I think the worst thing as well is like coming from a swimming background. That 2019 year, I was like the whole of the summer I couldn't run. Like I had IT band syndrome in both knees. So like I could ride, but even cycling was a little bit painful, and I kind of like did enough to get like ready for the event, but like I was not ready to run a marathon, let alone a marathon off the bike. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember walking more of Tenby than I ran probably.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that. Like from when I was there, from like seeing a lot of people, that run course is brutal. But before we go into a bit about how you started and everything like that, we'll go into a bit of that in a little while. I just wanted to see what were your opinions on Kona first of all. I mean, what did you think? Did it really motivate you? Did it light your fire for next year?
Yeah, obviously Kona is a beast in the sense that like the conditions, it's the world championships that everyone tries to be that like best version of themselves, and they probably push a little bit too hard on the bike, etc. But like looking back at like what everyone did, like for someone like myself, like new pro, I've only raced pro a couple of years. I want to try and race Kona in the future. Like to be in the top 5 to 10, like there doesn't actually need to be anything special. It's like I was looking at it, it's like if I could swim at the front or front pack at the very least, if I could ride at 300 watts, and then if I could run 245, you're pretty much banking a top five performance. And I know it's not that simple because there's so many more things
That,
involved in it
that would
in
have been
terms of heat and
second this
stuff.
year if you'd
Yeah,
have got off the
yeah,
bike
literally.
if you got off the bike in the lead pack this year and then managed to run a 2:45. That would have you'd have finished a minute ahead of Magnus because I think he only ran a 2:46.
Yeah,
And a
exactly.
240
Yeah, yeah.
got a third place spot this year.
And
Um,
then that's like the thing is like then you're like, well, Kona's a bit of a beast. If you probably need to run 10 minutes quicker over an Ironman to like give yourself a bit of a buffer to like die a bit in the heat in Kona. But like yeah, like I'm not saying like oh next year I'm going to be doing that kind of thing, but it's like it's nice to know that you haven't actually got to do anything ridiculous to be really competitive at that race, and it's kind of like give myself the next say 5, 6, 7 years. Can I get to that level? And it's like yeah, I feel like I possibly could, and that's where like I think the motivation comes of like I've just got to get my head down, get to work, and like just keep chipping away because it it's great to think you can do it, but unless you like go away and like start putting some work in and start like working towards something like that, you're never going to get there.
So, in terms of like your racing for next year, is the goal to try and get into Nice? Like, are you eyeing that one up as well? Do you fancy it, or are you just like, no, Kona's for me, or is it like Nice is a world champ, so I want to be there as well, and like, test myself on the day and see how I can do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've got a space for Marbella next November, the 70.3 Worlds. So that'd be a first World Champs, which would be cool. But I'd love to try and qualify for Nice as well. Um, I'm a bit, I guess we're quite kind of similar. Like we're both, slightly bigger athletes in the sense that like, our race weights are maybe like somewhere between like 77 and 80 kgs. So I know that the climbing of like a Nice course doesn't necessarily like suit me. Um, but then also like I've had some of my best, bikes in races in like on like hillier courses, like Swansea where I live and like Wales and like I was pretty good in Switzerland and like I actually think that like slightly stronger athletes we can just put out decent power and decent watts and I think not that Nice is like going to be perfect course terrain wise for someone like myself, but like I guess Magnus, Sam, and everyone showed last time around that like if you can climb up that long climb pretty strong with decent power, then it's not necessarily like a disadvantage. But yeah, I'd like to try and qualify, and if I was to qualify for next year in Nice, it would very much be to get myself into the best shape I could for the race, and then just try and execute a good day. And I would probably have no expectations on like trying to finish in a specific place or anything other than like probably try and swim at the front of the race and then kind of do what I could do after that. But yeah, I think I'd love to be in Kona. I think definitely in terms of like longer term, I think Kona is much more a bigger goal, and that's obviously 2 years away now. So I'd love to be there in 2 years' time. That's probably more than I'd like to be in Nice next year.
With Nice being like next year, what will where will you look to qualify? Like, and will you be taking part in like going all in for the Ironman Pro Series, or will you just like look to pick your races and be like, this? I'm just going to pick this race, execute it, and if it goes well, great. If it doesn't, then you're not going to add in other races, kind of thing. Or is it like you're going to chase the series, hope to qualify, chasing the series, and then finish it off with Nice? Like, what's your racing plans, and how are you thinking of taking on the season?
Yeah, so I think for me it's probably a combination of the both. Like I think I'd like to be able to do the series, but I think I fell foul of like what a lot of us did this year, which was like one race didn't go well and then like try and do another series race to then try and like kind of like claw yourself back into it. So like
Going
I
back to
had a
this year, then, like before you go on to that next year, then,
yeah,
so
yeah.
like in hindsight now, like knowing what kind of you say the trap that we all fell in, so knowing what you know now and how the season was structured for this year, what would you have done differently, and how would you have taken it? Like looking at how you performed in the races, what do you reckon you would have changed, and like going ahead, and how what races would you have done if you knew what was going to happen? Like looking back at the year now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think I was pretty I think I was very fit for Ironman Texas this year, and I got like some sort of like flu-like thing like a day or so away, before the race, and I
So
think
many of us
that
got ill before that
oh, it
race.
was
There was
ridiculous, wasn't
so
it?
many
Yeah.
people. I feel
Um,
like me and John were talking about this, and we think that we never really came back from that. Like obviously doing Texas and then trying to get back into training afterwards. I never got back to the form that I was
to where
in
you were,
throughout the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
year. Yeah, as
But
what I
even if
was
you look
before
at
Texas.
yeah, like even if I look at like my fitness score on Training Peaks, and I know that like CTL and stuff isn't always like the be all end all kind of thing, but like I think I was the fittest I was, say like 10 days to 2 weeks before Texas, and I kind of never got back to that level of fitness the rest of the season. Um, and I think then because Texas has gone badly and I had the flu, and I basically walked half the marathon. Um, I then obviously a bit like you and John did as well. Like I decided like, oh, Cairns could be a great opportunity to like potentially put yourself back in the mix of maybe being able to do the series, but also like maybe a good opportunity to try and get a Kona slot as well. Um, and I don't know if it was jet lag or another illness, but like that just again, I just had just the worst legs in the world on the bike there. Um,
In
and I think
hindsight,
that
would you? Like knowing now, like looking back at how Texas went, like do you think that was a good decision going there, or would
No,
you
not
have
at all.
like known
No.
like so you would have like sacked it off ideally, like then now looking back you would have been like I'm not I
Yeah,
wouldn't race.
I think I probably should have, and not again. You can't really cherry pick in pro triathlon anymore. Like, there's no such thing really, because like even in like smaller races, like a lot of good people turn up. But I think if I was to look at it again, I think I probably would have not done cans, and then looked at like other, maybe more like European based races, where there was still an opportunity to maybe get a Kona slot, but like not like, because you'll know it, like the financial investment, the time investment away from family to go to like Australia is a lot different than like nipping over to like, I don't know, Ironman Austria or something like that, like for a weekend. It's like
I
completely
think
different.
yeah, I think like from looking at my data and stuff leading into Cairns and obviously experience of like flying over there for New Zealand and in the past, even I got there before you. Like I think I'm trying to think how much further I got there. I
You were
think
like a
I arrived.
Thursday, weren't you? And I think I arrived like Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I was like 2 or 3 days before you. I was about like I think 9 or 10 days before the race, something like that, maybe 10 days.
Yeah.
And my heart rate variability never really got back to baseline. Like obviously it took a hit when I first got there, and then I think it might have just scraped into like into the baseline by the time the race came. But if it did, only just. It was like something like it would right at the bottom, so not ideal. And I would say that was probably like with how I felt. I felt good, but like nowhere near as good as what I would do if I was like absolutely pinging, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like if you're really going to go to Australia to race, the minimum you need to give yourself if you want to be actual perform really well on the day is really 2 weeks. To let your body actually fully
Oh
recover
yeah,
and
yeah, for sure, yeah.
variability get back.
And that's one of
That's
the things
why.
that I probably would do different is like, I've got a young child. I've got, I haven't got the say necessarily like the financial backing to like do lots of big trips. And like as you said there, like if I was to do like cans again in the future, like it would need to be like a 3 4 4 week trip. You'd need to bring like wife, family, like baby out as well, because like, once you can't really get away with going away for that longer period without like your kind of your support network as well. um so I think in like the shorter term, like the trips over to like the US, I think like races like Texas, Lake Placid, Arizona, stuff like that, I think they kind of work because you can do them quite comfortably in a week. But I think Australia is going to have to be a no go for the next couple of seasons, I reckon. But yeah, I guess like from that knock on effect, I think I had a bad race in Texas. I had a bad race in Cairns. I even had that kind of like horrible feeling after Cairns of like, like, am I just like, should I just not do triathlon because like it's just not going well this year? um,
So when you
so
had that feeling, then did you talk to anyone like at the time? Like, so what happened when you got back from Cairns and like you obviously like you spoke to your missus and your dad's a big fan, isn't he? He came all the way up to
yeah, yeah, my
Cairns
dad
with you and stuff.
supports me. Yeah,
What
yeah.
was what was it like emotionally after that then? And when you chat to them, like, did you or was that all in your head? Did you air it like publicly to them? And
I
say like, I don't
probably
know what's going.
Yeah, I probably kept a lot more of it to myself than anyone else. But I obviously I speak to my wife quite a lot, and also my dad, as you said. But I think my dad's brilliant because he's obviously very very supportive, but he also is a very positive person, and he's the type of person, he's like, right, just like keep your head down, keep cracking on, like, you know it's in there, you can kind of, you just got to get it out of yourself. And I think I kind of kept engaged, I kept like mentally focused and training well, but like I definitely needed something to kind of keep me in the sport. And it's kind of like weird. I don't know. I heard Ari Clow on a podcast talking about how like things kind of happen for a reason sometimes. And I was kind of felt like I was a bit down, and then like I went to say Swansea 70.3, and I got my first pro podium, and then it's like almost like the universe has a way of kind of like keeping you in, because it's like, oh shit, okay, actually, yeah, I am okay. I'm kind of like hanging in. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, and
so
that would have been in front of all your friends and family, wouldn't it, as well? Because it was
yeah,
literally
yeah.
on your doorstep, one wasn't it?
So yeah, I think Swansea was exactly what I needed middle of the year, because it kind of reminded me that like, okay, shit, actually that's a better performance in terms of just like getting a podium than I've ever got racing pro after a couple of seasons. So it was like, okay, I am getting better in terms of just like, black and white, I'm getting better. But I think I still kind of needed something different. And I think we've chatted a lot off air about like other things, and I've changed kind of like my training approach after the season's just gone. Started with a new coach and just like trying to do
Before you
things that
say
I think,
about before you start saying about the new coach and stuff, I've just got a
yeah,
question
yeah,
going back to like cans and stuff. So obviously, like after that happened, and you like, what did you say to your previous coach, and like, what did he say to kind of keep you focused, or like, did you chat to him at all, or was there literally nothing that was said? I mean, like, because I mean, I
yeah,
obviously do it myself. So I don't have a good
yeah,
base. I
yeah.
haven't really got a coach. Really, like,
I
uh,
guess like I guess a coach, like at the end of the day, a coach is going to they're going to give you their best, what they think they can do to prepare you best for like a specific event. And then like if the event goes well, then like great, the plan kind of worked. If the event didn't go well, I think they're probably in the same position as you are, which is like, okay, that's super frustrating. Like, okay, why didn't it go well? So then like you can tear it apart. So you can tear apart like the travel, which is obviously like what we've discussed as well. But like, did the travel just absolutely screw me? And like, because I've never flown over to Australia before, like, was I my body just not ready for that? Was it the humidity and heat? Because like it wasn't ridiculous in Cairns, but like it still was pretty hot and humid. Um,
we
and
hadn't had
then
any warm weather in England, had
no,
we, up until that point? So it was quite a shock to the system from what we had, because we had a
it
really
was
late
hot.
summer, so it
Yeah,
was like 50 degrees back in the UK before we went there. So it was like, no, it wasn't like we'd gone there from in August from where we had really nice weather, and it would have been
nice
no
weather.
different
Yeah,
than
yeah.
like a hot day in August. It was, so for us, it was quite a shock to the system, wasn't it? Like traveling from England at that point.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing that we kind of looked at as like a maybe a big factor, because I tried to do some heat prep, but I went for like the passive version, so I did like hot baths, and I think that
Yeah,
like maybe my body just responds better, because I always found that like even that week in Cairns, I went for like a run on say like the Tuesday, and I felt like I was absolutely melting, and then like I went for a run then like 2 days later, and I felt like so much better. And I'm like, maybe that's the heat prep I need to do, is actually just like, you've seen like crazy people going for like a run in like one of those like overall spacesuits and stuff like that, and maybe that is actually
yeah.
like the type of UK heat prep that I need, which is just like making my body super hot while it's exercising, and not just like in a hot bath or a sauna.
I personally find that like if you want to do heat prep properly, I think you're best just going to somewhere where it's hot
Go somewhere
and
hot, yeah,
actually
yeah.
training heat, but not for like an overly too long a period. Because I feel like I start detraining and losing fitness after like a couple of weeks of being in the heat. But I find like 10 days, 2 weeks before training in the heat is really good. But also, I think when with people going in like hot baths and like saunas and stuff, they don't get their core body temperature up high enough for long enough. You know, you can do like 20, 30 minutes in a hot bath, but like, I mean, we spoke to someone on the podcast, Glenn, who's an expert in the heat, and he was saying that you need to build up to 2 hours at an elevated core body temperature. So
Which you
no
can only
one's
really
really
do if you're
spending.
living. Yeah, you can only do that if you're living in a hot climate, or you're training. Yeah, as you said, training camp, and you're doing 2-3 sessions a day in like warm
Or you just need
conditions.
to get a hot room, but keep your body temperature up and get it up there towards the end of the heat prep for like 2 hours, which is easier said than done, isn't it? You know, and it's a pretty miserable
Yeah,
way
yeah,
of doing it. But then also you've got to take into account how much fitness are you losing, because the sessions are going to be compromised. Because it's not like you can do intervals when you're trying to get your core body temperature up like that and stuff. So it's a trade off, isn't it? You know, like how much do you want to trade off in like terms of your fitness training and your fitness gains to get used to the heat? Um, yeah,
yeah.
but I
It's
find
it's
like getting out there early
chatting.
is like the best.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that was the thing as well, and it goes back to the early statement of like, if I was to do Australia again, like a race like Cairns, you've got to go there early. But I think you're going there early not just for like the jet lag. You're going there early to do the heat prep as well. You're going there to get over your jet lag, to get the heat prep, to rest and taper, and then like go into the race. So I think what we took away from like what David, my old coach, was kind of taking away from that was like it's hard to pinpoint if it's the travel or the heat that caused you to have a poor day, but like they're the factors that have like they're two factors of like, and then you could nitpick little things like, training sessions, like maybe I did like a training session just before I flew out, maybe like that was a bit of a nail in the coffin and I didn't actually need to do that kind of thing. You can nitpick a lot of things, um
What
but I
training
guess
session
like
did you do before you flew out that now, like, you look back and you think
well,
maybe I
okay,
shouldn't?
yeah, so for context, like my best bike legs, I kind of like maybe ride like around 290, 300 watts, maybe just over 300 watts on some of my best bike legs, um, on an Ironman. And like, I think it was 10 days out from the race, I did like a 4 hour ride where the middle 3 hours of that ride, I think I averaged like 307 watts and normalized about 313. Like, it's a non stop kind
What
of like
was that
3 hours.
consistent of then? Was it literally just 3 hours hard in the middle, or was it actually specific intervals?
No, it was just a 3 hour block, 3 hour block at like race intensity.
How
Yeah,
long was this then before you flew out as well?
about well, we did about 2 or 3 days. Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
like
right. So it
the
wasn't like
fatigue
it
of
was
that as
like the
well.
next day.
No, it
Yeah,
wasn't like the
but it
day
was.
before I flew. But again, like I don't think I think sometimes there's like a physiological reason for doing stuff like that, like teaching your body to like actually hold that intensity. But like I think sometimes it's more of a mental thing, and I think even on that sort of session, as an athlete, like I probably could have just knocked it back and pushed 290 and be like, oh, save myself 20 watts and like, oh, it feels easy, like I can do this on race day. But like I think I saw the
Yeah,
session, I was like, oh, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. I feel good, keep going.
I think that's a really underestimated thing. Like, people think that all of it is coming down to training. I think like Strava in a way can be really bad for that, because you see what everyone's doing and people are almost like wanting to post good sessions up. And mentally, if you're like pushing like fairly hard, even if you're on a good day and you're pushing, like, you're obviously taking it for granted how easy it was mentally. But you've only got so many
Yeah,
hard efforts you can do like that throughout the course of the year, especially like a long one where it's like 3 hours. It's different if it's like a 10-minute threshold effort and you're kind of like pushing to get to the end, for the last 2 minutes. But the
yeah,
amount of
yeah, yeah, 100%.
concentration it
Yeah,
takes, doesn't it, to get 3 hours, like that, and digging. It's like you need those extra gears for race day, I think, where you're actually trying to like really keep focused and keep on the power.
yeah. And I think, and then it kind of, I think that almost then had like a negative psychological effect then come the race, because I, I then obviously then had really bad legs from the get go in Cannes. So I got out of the water and I started pushing on the bike, and within the first couple of minutes, like I was struggling to push like 270 watts, 260 watts, and like knowing that you did 3 hours,
Before that,
three hours.
you must have been really confident before that, because obviously you just done that three
Yeah,
hours at
yeah, 100%.
305. So
Yeah,
going
yeah,
into the race like the day before, you must have been thinking, well, all I've got to do is do what I just did in that training session 10 days ago, and I'm going to be in the hunt, getting off the bike, and I'm going
yeah,
to be
yeah, yeah,
running for the
100%.
podium.
Yeah, yeah. So then, like when you go,
That's
then like within the first like 10K of that bike, I got dropped from the front group, and I was pushing like, I think I pushed the worst Ironman watts I've ever pushed. So like even when I was an age grouper in 2019, and I didn't do enough training, I think I pushed like 267 watts that day as an age grouper. Um,
yeah,
but like in cans, I think I averaged 242 watts, which is like, you look at it now, like if I went and just sat on like the turbo now, or just went out for an easy spin, to like push 240 watts is like, it's easy. It's not even zone two. It's like probably like zone one, Um, so
yeah.
it's almost like laughable when you think about how crap I felt on race day. But yeah, I guess there's a
Crazy
lot
that
to
it
take
can.
away from that.
Yeah, it's crazy that it can go like that and feel that much harder, especially when you travel all the way around the world. The last thing you want to happen is something like that. And but
Yeah,
it is strange, isn't it? You can do these training sessions, and then they go so well, and you're holding great power, and then you get to the day when it matters, and then you can't. It's just it must be just demoralizing, But then also, you in another way, you know that you can do it because you've done it in training. It's just being able to do it on the race day, isn't it? Executing it.
yeah. I think it's a balance.
Um,
It's a very fine line, I think.
Yeah. So then after Cairns, you obviously raced Swansea. You touched on that, and you got the podium, and like you were really like buzzing, absolutely on cloud nine, because you managed to get your first pro podium in like a decent race, and like not far off like first and second, really. I think like Harry won it that day, didn't he? And you must have been like
I think
what,
it was
three
about
minutes
two
behind
minutes.
in the
Yeah,
end?
2-3 minutes. Yeah,
2 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah. So after Swansea, what were you thinking then, and where did you kind of go to next? Was the Pro Series still on the radar at that point?
No, so I'd completely like I was gonna do a couple of 70.3s, maybe another full distance, and I was like kind of in my head was already kind of thinking like, okay, great, I've got a space for Marbella 70.3 wells next year. Um, let's kind of like focus, like just like almost just enjoy racing a little bit because I think like mentally I was before Swansea, as I said to you, like I felt like I was a little bit like just like on that kind of downward spiral where you're like, oh, I don't really know if I really want to do this, and like and not like the enjoyment, I guess, is also starting to slip a little bit. So you get a good result at Swansea, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's just race a bit, let's just try and have some fun. Um, and then almost like I guess my mindset kind of shifted straight away to like this coming year, like 2025, and I'd already thought to myself is like, right, like how can I be a better athlete next year almost. Um, which I mean, like I had some pretty mediocre kind of races to end the year. Like again, like very consistently up and down. My consistency's been pretty poor all year, um, and that's kind of led to like just the change of coach. And I don't necessarily think that um, I don't necessarily think I needed a new coach in the sense that like David wasn't like doing all he could for me. But I think almost like I've been with him for like 2.5 years, and sometimes there's like almost a psychological refreshment to like working with someone new because like everyone works differently, like every coach works differently, everyone programs like training differently. So just like having someone else look at what I've been doing, like pick out the good, pick out the bad of it, change things and like adjust to what like they would recommend. I think that's been like I've started with a new coach a couple of weeks ago, and that's already been a super enlightening kind of process. And already I'm like optimistic about going into next year because I'm like I'm not doing the same kind of stuff again. I'm doing something completely different, and if you do something different you're going to get a different result.
So what are you doing that's different? Like how much do you reckon the training will be different over the course of the winter compared to what you were doing like last winter and the winter before? Like, do you think it's going to be drastically different, or is it just like small little tweaks? Like, what are some of the changes that you expect, or like from your chats that
Yeah, I
you
think
reckon?
yeah, small change. I think what I used to do when I was self coaching before working with David was um, I used to do quite a lot of frequency. So like I would pretty much ride my bike like 6 times a week. I would, again, I wouldn't run ridiculous, but maybe like run 5 times a week, swim 5 times a week, and like I wouldn't necessarily do like big volume in those sessions. Um, but like once you add up all the hours that you do within those like frequent sessions, you end up doing a decent amount of training. Um, so already like we kind of shifted away because like when I was working with David, like sometimes I'd only ride my bike say like 3 times a week, but they're like bigger rides, and kind of like I say like more energy demand specific to Ironman, but it just obviously wasn't quite working for me. Like it works for some athletes, and I don't think it was quite working for my physiology necessarily. So I've kind of gone back to more regular riding already, and I'm liking that. Like just lots of like 2.5 hour rides. Like a lot of frequency. Um, and I'm enjoying that already. And I think also with what I'm going to do this season is I'm going to really go to the labs and like look at how my like what's my limiting factors, because I think at the moment like one of my limiting factors is I come from a swimming background, and swimming is a very like anaerobic and very like calorie carbohydrate burning sport. Like a lot of the events in the pool is all about like basically how like fast you can go. And I think because I spent almost 20 years doing that, I think I tend to burn quite a lot of carbohydrate. So I think I need to work out in the lab, like in through like lab testings and stuff, how much carbs do I actually burn, and like how can I like say like replace those carbs in like fueling, but then also like how can you manipulate training just like ever so slightly to kind of make me more efficient in that area as well. And I think that could be quite because I think like I've never had an issue with like energy on like 70.3s, but like in the last kind of 18 months, I've really found in my Ironmans that I've just got onto the run and I've just felt spent. Like, and my training would indicate that like I could run like super well off the bike, but like I just like would get into a race and just like start running, and I just basically don't even feel like I'm like myself when I'm running. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to like this kind of like more frequent approach, get into the labs, understand data a little bit more, and then just yeah, go into next year where I'm gonna kind of try and target the Ironman Pro Series, but again, like not be so hell bent on just doing that series. So I probably will open my year maybe at like South Africa or Texas, um, but kind of have like two plans for the season. And after that first race of the season, kind of decide if I'm going like left or right. So like if the first race goes really well and I'm like in the mix for the series, then maybe I'll do like a Lake Placid or a Frankfurt, and then also like Nice. I've got the
Yeah,
70.3 world, so I just have to chuck in Swansea 70.3, which I'll do anyway. Um, but whereas if like the first race of the year doesn't go like perfectly, or I don't get a slot for Nice or whatever it is, I might then look at the season in a different way and go, well, actually, okay, I still want to try and be at Nice. Is it worth doing a different race like, I don't know what, like Lanzarote or Leeds or whatever other Ironmans there are? Um, but kind of have like, yeah, have two plans and kind of have them written out and like do that first race, and then like that result will say, right, you're going left or you're going right.
because if it doesn't go well, the series is just, I think, pretty
It's not
much
worth it's not worth it's
impossible.
not worth chasing. Yeah, yeah,
No, because I mean we've got a month less really this year because we're racing in Nice, aren't we? Whereas like when it's in
yeah.
Kona, it's like this year it was like an extra 6 weeks from the last race. Whereas they've almost shortened it for the pros for the pro men this year. So it's like you're done and dusted by September. So if it doesn't go well, you've basically got the next event you could do is Texas at the end of April, and then you've got to do 3 Ironmans between the end of April and the start of September, and they've all got to go well.
It's quite a lot, yeah.
Um, yeah, I just find it's just so congested. There's just not enough. There's not enough close enough. Like it would be good if there was two close to each other at points, so you could do like two and then have a big break and do another one. But I just find they're all spaced out, and it's just really ruins like your training cycles. Like by the time you recover and then build for another one, it's like you've got 3 weeks of training once you've recovered and before the taper of the next one that you just can't do anything. And I find like your level just will not improve
Starts
throughout
dropping,
the
yeah, yeah,
season.
yeah.
Like yeah, you're just going to be start dropping or you're hanging on for dear life. And it's like, I don't really enjoy doing races like that. I like being able to do a proper build and like actually taper for a race and being on top form, and actually executing it well rather than like, a half-hearted race because you haven't had the time to prepare properly for races. Like, I mean, no one really likes doing races where you're not performing at your best, do you?
No, no,
Like
not at all. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that,
you
that's
with
that's that's the key thing is like being prepared for the race and like yeah, build up properly over the winter for this first race of the year, and then like having those two plans. But like regardless if like you go one way or the other way, like I'm not just gonna like randomly chuck another like Ironman in like a month's time because I'm trying to chase like the overall series or something. It's going to
yeah,
be like very thought out and planned, and it's like right, well, if that one goes badly or that one goes well, then you still have that like recovery after the Ironman. You still then like go back to some basics and start building back towards like that next goal. And because if I was to race say Leeds in July or Lake Placid in July, like they're a week apart, so between like say a South Africa or a Texas, you'd have a clear plan of like how you were going to build up to those races. And
yeah.
I think the chopping and changing part is a difficult one because if you're always tapering and racing, you're never building up fitness. And then also you're just like, I think mentally you've got to like really you've got to be invested in a race to really give it your best, I think as well.
In terms of your swim training with your like coaching in the past, like so with David and with like Sam, do they kind of just let you get on with your swim training because obviously you're making the front packs, you've come from a swim background, or do they actually give you specific sessions and like properly coach you? How does that work?
Yeah, so I've even though I've got like my swim background, I swim coach. I've kind of given them the reins over my swimming as well because, and it sounds like quite basic, but like I feel like as long as I'm swimming 4 times a week, I'm still going to be in the front pack. in terms of like I
Yeah.
don't
Were
like
you swimming
I'm not
four
gonna go.
times a week with David?
It would vary. Like I'd say, like sometimes it was more often than not it was about four. Yeah, I reckon. Um, but I think if I was, as long as I'm doing that consistently throughout the year, I think like I can turn up to a race and like pretty much be confident that like I should be in the front pack. Um, I think that I probably need to take a little bit more ownership over like some specific details. So I think like when I was like back end of working with David, I think sometimes I neglected my like speed work a little bit, and I kind of would just do a lot of like race specific stuff. And I think I actually think I need that like fast 25s, those fast 50s to like really connect with the water and feel kind of really fast. Um,
So when you
but I
say
think
fast, how many of them would you do for like people? So like, for people that are wondering that, would that be like two or three 25s, but all out with loads of recovery, or would it be like eight or 10 of them like together with like shortish recovery? Like
yeah,
what
good
would be an
question.
example?
I actually think you need big recovery because I like speed development wise, like if you wanted to get like a kind of a lactate burn or like an anaerobic kind of sensation or even like a VO2 sensation, you do lots of repetitions and you like wouldn't have that much rest and you just like, you could do for VO2 work, you could do like 4 to 6 50s or even 4 to 8 50s with like 30-second rests, but like as fast as you can, have a couple of hundred easy, and you could do that like two, three, four times. But for like speed work I'm talking about, it's more like rawness in terms of like getting from point A to point B as quick as you can. So a set that I actually give a lot of the athletes I coach is something like 8 rounds, where you go like a push 25 as fast as you can. You then have a little like 20-second, 30-second recovery, and then you swim 75 easy with like the best possible technique. So you're really thinking about like smooth holding water, feeling like, and it's recovery. Like you're trying to get any kind of like junk you've built up on that like fast 25 out of your system. Again, have
Yeah.
like another 20 to 20 seconds, 30 seconds rest, and then repeat that like 8 times. So you're only getting like 200 meters, but that of like fast swimming, but that 200 meters of fast swimming, you're going like fast. You're going as fast as you can for that. Like
Would you,
for me, it's
if
like
you were doing that
11 seconds or whatever.
11 seconds, would you have someone timing you like with a stopwatch then on the pool side, and and you'd be looking at like sub 12 seconds for them?
In an ideal world, yes, because like I think it's important to like check your speed. Um, I guess because I've been swimming since I was about 7 years old, like I can tell if I'm swimming fast. Like I don't necessarily always need someone to like get like with a stopwatch to say like that was a good one or that was a slow one. Like I can always
Yeah.
tell if I'm moving through the water correctly, if it like everything feels connected. Um, but like in an ideal world, yes, like it's obviously not ideal with like people with like Garmin's and stuff, but you know you can kind of time yourself within reason, but you probably slow yourself down, push off, and slow yourself down a little bit on the finish. But as long as the 23 meters between that is really high quality, you're going to get the speed adaptation. And that's literally what I think I missed a little bit is just that like that raw that raw speed element. And you could do like I could do 50 repetitions. You don't have to make they don't have to be 25s, but like I think like 25s, 50s, maybe even 75, and you could get some really good speed work done. I think if you when you start going like hundreds, I think the intent of the session starts to change and it's a little bit less speed focused. It's a bit more like how you can tolerate a bit of lactate and or like VO2 kind of stimulus.
If you were doing that set, would you do that like say once a week for a 6 week period or something like that? Like, or is it something you just throw in like once every 2 or 3 weeks,
I
like
think I think you
throughout?
can sprinkle it. I don't think you have to do it every week necessarily, but like in terms of say like professionals who swim, professional triathletes who swim like 4 or 5 times a week, like you could do that as part of like your like skill or like easier session. Like you could do like a little warm up. You could do those 8 rounds, which is like 800 meters, and then you could still do like another 1500 meters of like easy swimming with some drills and stuff. And it's probably like a 3.5K session. So I don't think it necessarily has to be its own session, but it can be like something that you sprinkle in once a week or every other week. Um, but I almost think something like that is something that maybe I need to include a little bit more of, like, continually, just to keep everything activated.
Yeah. I've got a question for you as well. So a lot of like a lot of triathletes are in the same boat as me, like pros, where we're not making the front pack and we're getting out with a big deficit. Like, and obviously some of them are big names, you know, Lionel Sanders, Sam Long, and even like Ari Klauer's like come into the sport late. And I know you know him, and he's like a fascinating example because he obviously went to Australia and he was doing like 80K a week, wasn't he? You know, for
Yeah, yeah,
periods. And like I've seen Sam Long post up quite a lot that he swims like 30K a week, and like Lionel Sanders doing 25, 30K a week. I know Sam was like swimming 30K a week for loads and like barely went under like 20, 25K. So they're doing huge volume, but a lot of them aren't seeing the gains that you would hope from that. Do you think that they are doing too much volume, that their bodies like they don't need to, because their body, like they'd be better off doing 20K and getting some quality in it and actually absorbing that training volume instead of doing like, oh, I'm going to do 30K because that's going to be better than 20K. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then 40K is
yeah,
better
no,
than
no,
30K.
completely.
What?
And I think I when I hear like some of these athletes doing these like massive amounts of swimming, like I don't know how they can do it, because obviously I went years where I would swim 70, 80K a week when I was a swimmer. But like I know now that like when I cycle and I run, like how much impact that helps. Like even this morning, like I went for a swim, and like it was only I think it was 4,000 meters to swim, but like I was tired, like, and I could feel like heavy, and I feel like people who are obsessed about volume would have just carried on swimming and they would have done 5, 6, 7K today. And like
Yeah,
4K for me was like felt like more than enough. So I don't understand how people can do like 35 plus K and like not, like their stroke must go to absolute shit, because like even my stroke felt like it was breaking down, and I've swam for,
yeah.
23 years now. So I think, yes, I think they overdo volume and they underdo. So again, I don't think the intensity is the issue as well, because I think a lot of triathletes are good at like pushing themselves and doing hard work. I think it's
Yeah.
probably a mixture of like too much volume and too much intensity, and actually they need to do like a lower volume, the correct amount of intensity, and then also then a lot of triathletes don't understand the fundamentals of like how to swim and how to like move in water. So like the number of triathletes that you'll see who can't do a streamline, and if they push and glide off the wall, can't get their feet past the flags. Like if you can't streamline off the wall, no fly kicks, just streamline, push and glide, and you can't get your feet past the wall, feet past the flag. Sorry, I don't think you fully understand how water works. If that makes sense,
I'm
like you
gonna
don't
give that.
understand how.
I'll give that a go and get a little video and post that up next time I'm in the pool and see if I can get my feet there. I get to the flags and it's my hands are getting to the flags and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm like still 2 meters away.
No, because it sounds really basic, but and like these are things that like swimmers, like when I coach some of the juniors, not anymore, but when I used to coach some of the juniors at the swim squad I work at, swim club I work at, like you got these like 6, 7, 8 year olds who you just basically have fun with them. Like you're doing like turn practice and like dive practice and these glides and these floating, and like they're training to swim, but like they're just basically experimenting and trying to understand how the water works. And I think a lot of people who come into swimming like as a later person, or like just haven't had like a proper swimming like upbringing, they don't understand that like if you just like hold a bit more air in your lungs, you'll float a bit better. If you can't tell if your legs are dropping, or you don't know how to manipulate the water to get your legs up, like little things like that, like if you just spent an hour in the pool with someone just like telling you like what to do and playing around, I think a lot of people would instantly swim better, just because they understand that like, okay, this is how water works. Which you just don't need the same sensation in biking and running. Like in a lot of triathletes will say like in swimming, like the harder they try, the slower they go, and that's
Yeah.
just because they're not applying the effort in the correct way.
and it's just so much more dense, isn't it? Water than air. That like
Yeah,
it's like aero is important on the bike, but hydrodynamics are going to be far more important in the swim than what aero is on the bike, just because it's like water's 1,000 times more dense, isn't it? If you're slightly out in your body position or like your hydrodynamics, you're going to pay for that, aren't you? And like a small change, I guess, can equal a lot
100%.
slower, or a lot more effort just
And
because of that.
actually, it's an interesting thing. Obviously, I know you've got one, but the endless pool, the endless
Yeah.
pool, I think is a funny one because if you're a good swimmer, you can cheat an endless pool because if you're a good
What,
swimmer and
what
you
do you get
understand
more hydrodynamic?
you're more hydrodynamic, so you're able to, as you put an arm in on freestyle, for example, and you rotate fully onto the side, and you're in this super streamlined position with one arm extended out in front, the water just flows around you. So you could put like
Yeah.
an endless pool up to like 56 100, 56 per seconds per 100, and if you're swimming really technically good, like you're gonna have to try a little bit. A lot of swimmers will
Yeah.
be able to cheat the system, and it won't actually be like they're swimming that fast. Whereas
Yeah.
a lot of triathletes will not have the same level of hydrodynamics and understand how they need to position their body. So you chuck the same amount of water at them, and they'll just get absolutely spat and pushed against the back wall of an endless pool. So
Yeah.
there's an endless pool is a funny thing, and like there's pros and cons to using one. But if you want to check how efficient you are and then check if you can cheat the system, then um, yeah, they are quite fun.
But it's probably a really good way of actually just getting to learn how the water works. Like you said about the streamlining thing, actually seeing you can really see the difference, can't you? You imagine like if you set it to say 1 minute 15 or 1 minute 20, and then you try doing different things with your technique, you could instantly get that good feedback as to how well you're going through the water just from like doing smaller changes, couldn't you?
Oh yeah,
Like it would give
100%.
you
Yeah,
like
like how long you spend on the side, like how straight your arm is,
yeah,
or whatever it is, and like even like when you push off the back wall of like an endless pool into like into the stream of the water, if you just like pushed off and you streamlined, the same like thing about like in the pool, if you put the pool on like 115 per 100, you should be able to streamline and kind of just keep going for like 3, 4, 5 seconds before you start the water start to push you back. Whereas like I think a lot of people will just like push off and they'll just like jump straight up and start swimming because they're like, oh, I need to swim. But like actually by like pushing and guiding and streamlining, you're actually kind of like, okay, I can feel that I'm moving through the water, and like this is a sensation that I need to create when I'm in like swimming in a real pool or open water.
yeah. I'm really conscious about taking too much of your time, Andy. But just before we go, one last thing. Like, there's so much more I'd love to talk to you about. But what's been your experience with getting sponsors, attracting new sponsors, and with creating a social media presence? Because obviously, we can all see, as being a professional, you kind of learn that you need to kind of get a good profile, don't you, on social media as well as getting the results if you want to get sponsors. And how have you found that over the last few years? Is there anything you're doing to try and create more of a social media presence? And how have you found getting attracting new sponsors and retaining your current ones since you started?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think I was actually chatting about it on a ride a couple of days ago because I think I've felt even over the last couple of years of racing professional, I feel like it's getting even harder in the last 2 years than it was even when I started out. And I know that speaking to a lot of people that back in like the say 2015s, 2016s, 2017s, it was a lot easier. You would approach, you're a professional triathlete, you'd be able to get at least a bike frame off a bike manufacturer pretty easy. Um, and I think nowadays it's a lot hard just to kind of get much. Um, so from that standpoint, like I just try and be like I found it pretty difficult to get, I guess, a lot of sponsors within the triathlon world. Um, I think a lot of them, tend to and quite rightly so go for who's won the world championship, who's second, who's third, that sort of thing.
So,
But I
what sponsors what sponsors have you got in the triathlon world, and how did that sponsorship come about? Like, did you contact them, and if so, what platform did you use to contact them?
so one of my biggest ones were has been Blue 70, and I think again like, I've been fortunate that I was introduced to Blue 70 when I was an age grouper through a lady I know who used to work for Blue 70. Um, and I truly believe that, and that relationship's been really good, and it's kind of developed over the years. And and I've obviously very thankful for that introduction in the first place. But I've have found that a lot of my sponsorship has been through that kind of platform of meeting someone, and or being introduced to someone and then developing a relationship, like a much more personal relationship. I do find that through like social media, like, and again, I haven't got the most followers in the world, but I feel like I've got a decent following on Instagram. Say, um, I think it's difficult to say have like just under 10,000 followers and then approach a company and kind of inquire about like doing stuff together and partnering. And obviously, um, but I don't think it's. I think some people do get quite successful out of that route, especially if they have a lot of followers. Um, so yeah, I guess from a standpoint of like where I am and moving forward is like I just want to obviously keep meeting people within the space and keep meeting like companies within the space and hopefully develop and foster relationships with different companies, um, and keep being as authentic as I can, because I feel like my social media is quite like, not that it's like boring or samey or whatever, but I kind of try and keep it like very authentic. So like what people see on my Instagram is what they see if they meet me at a race. And like I don't feel like I'm like trying to play up to the cameras and be this kind of like character that I'm not. And that's hopefully what people think when they meet me. But yeah, I don't know.
Will you would there be any chance you'd set up a YouTube channel? I know you did ones before, and you had Dan, I think Triathlon Dan, didn't you, doing your editing and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
But what happened to that? Stopped, and do you actually follow anyone else's like triathletes YouTube channels, or is that just something that you're just not into? You kind of feel like you
Yeah,
train
no, no,
enough and
no.
you're in it.
No, I definitely I did a lot of I started my YouTube when I was in lockdown in 2020, and I actually really enjoyed the process of just like taking little video clips and like putting them together and making videos. Um, I think what's happened is like I came out the back of COVID. I started racing professional, and actually when I started racing professional, I needed more finances to kind of fund that. So I've actually then been working in other like avenues and areas that I've then had to like kind of neglect the YouTube side of things, because it was that like extra kind of stress that like I didn't really have time for in the week. But I definitely would like to restart my YouTube a little bit more, because I think it's fun putting content out there. Like I like, as you said there, like I do follow a lot of people's YouTubes. I obviously watch your YouTube. I watch people like Sam's YouTube, Trevor Foley, Lionel is obviously the classic one. But like I tend to consume a lot of like YouTubes, um, especially when like if I'm on like a long turbo ride. I do
That's the
enjoy.
best time, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the best time to watch them, isn't it? Especially now. And I was going to say, now's the season to get
Now's the
on
season for
board because
YouTube.
people, yeah, because
um,
a lot of people in the northern hemisphere are going to be riding on the turbo and they're dying to watch something to make the time pass by quicker.
But no, but I think it's good though, because like I also really enjoy just like the stuff around races as well. Like if someone has a good race or a bad race, like I enjoy like hearing their like story of like how they think the day went, what actually happened from their point of view, and like you know I think it's very relatable. Like I enjoy the YouTube videos where people have like honestly had a really shit day and a really crap race, and they're just like, this is, I don't know what's gone wrong. This is what happened. Like, don't know why this happened. Like, I quite enjoy the honesty a lot of people put out, and I think I probably need to be a bit more like that.
You saying that made me think, oh, well, I've had a few videos like that over the last 12 months.
But it's relatable because like it's impossible unless you're like literally winning everything to like not have bad days, isn't it? Especially in pro
Yeah,
triathlon when
you
you don't
might
get so much right.
you might like watching those kind of videos, but I hope I don't have to make any more like that.
Oh.
um, no, but I just want to say anyway, yeah, thanks for your time, Andy. And I know we were talking a bit before you came on air that you're coaching a lot of people, and if people are interested in getting coached by you, like, where can they find you, and how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, just jump onto my account on Instagram. So Andrew_H_T. Drop me a message. But yeah, so my side hustle is coaching, as well as I say side hustle. Like I was coaching before I started doing triathlon in swimming. So um, I actually was a coach before I was a pro triathlete, and now I do a bit of both.
But unlike a lot of coaches, you're actually on the deck coaching in person as well. You can actually coach a swim team, so you're not like someone who's just doing it all
Yes.
totally
So
via like Training Peaks.
I
You've
work
actually,
with yeah, sorry, Karen. Oh yeah, I was working with I work with Swansea University swim team, and then also do remote tri coaching as well. Yeah.
yeah, thanks for your time, and I just want to just get it out there that Kate Baldwin's going to be working with you on like your strength and conditioning training. So for those of you that are listening to this that would like to get into strength and conditioning, we've got an app called Valir, and it will do personalised programs for you. It will change the weights and everything. But we also work with some professionals, and Kate Baldwin, who's got a PhD in strength training for triathletes, is going to be working with Andy.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to kind of getting you strong, mate, and getting you to Kona and or to Nice. But hopefully, you won't tow along that front pack any faster than what they have to be, because it's just going to be more deficit that I get out the water with. Because very unlikely that I'm going to be swimming back before then. But no,
You're
thanks for
gonna
your time, and I'll let you get on.
practice your streamlines later.
I'll be practicing my streamlines, mate, and I'll be good for the first 5 meters of the swim anyway in Nice, and then after that, well, we'll just hope for the best.
Yeah, cheers for having me on, Joe.
All right, thanks. Cheers.